Hello, everybody, and welcome to I Heard You When You Said, the only podcast where random singing and sometimes dancing is expected. Stacy,
Expected, huh?
expected.
Which one of us is the expected dancer here?
Depends on the day.
Really?
I mean, I don't see you coming up the stairs blasting Spotify, getting everybody hyped, and on Monday mornings.
You're right. But if I did, would you know? Because I'm usually up here before you.
Well, I wouldn't know if I wasn't up here.
You know what I'll do? I'm gonna wait on the days we take our lunch breaks. I'm gonna let you come up here first after lunch, and I'm gonna return the favor. I'm gonna be the hype man. I'm gonna be the lunch midday hype
The
man.
lunch midday hype man.
100%.
I'm down for it.
100%.
I'm so down for it.
So we haven't been here for a while.
I know. Feels like eternity.
Wow. So I would like to start this off with welcome back. Glad to be here with you.
I know. Hold on before we get started.
Oh, that ASMR. That First Form energy drink. That while Justin is giving audible satisfaction to his energy drink and blessing all of your ears, we do want to remind you that we are not doctors. We do not play them on the internet. We are not therapists. We do not play them on the internet. And nothing that we say or do should be used in lieu of professional medical or mental health advice. Fair?
I'm so glad that you're getting better at that disclaimer.
Yeah? What'd you like about it this time?
Well, usually it says nothing we say or do can be used against us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, technically, it can be used against us, just not in a court of law.
Also true. Judge Judy taught me that.
You're more than welcome to, message us random shit on social media and be like, hey, y'all really said some stupid stuff on that podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be like, hey, sounds like a you problem. Don't listen. Unsubscribe.
You're probably right.
Yeah.
And we'll continue to do so.
I'd say while you're probably not wrong, it is your freedom to unsubscribe. So, you're right. We haven't been here for a while.
A hot second. It's been a bit.
But things have been so good since we last recorded. Not that they weren't good before, but we've really made some big strides in our business and in the flow of the weekly cadence of building and idea generation and getting things done in a timely manner and communication and things like that. So what's funny is, and I think this is people will relate to this, is it's the only reason I'm divulging this information, but this is simultaneously the most productive we've ever been and the least profitable we've ever been at the same time. I just thought about that the other day.
You're right.
We have definitely not had the income that we've had in previous months at the end of the year. But it's actually been the most fun time to be an operator.
Oh my goodness. I actually, since we're divulging information, because I mean, we can and people like it, I think I'm actually really confident that if we look, I don't think we've recorded in over a month, that we grew up a lot in the last month, like in every area. And so this will really be fun to look back at a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, be like, oh my gosh, remember when? And I'll even add that, yeah, it is the most impactful we've been. I'm even going to say impactful between clients and our co-op within school. Like, having done this together for really, we've been coaching people together for 2 years about, this is the most impactful I think we've ever been. And so I don't even feel, for the most part, like not profitable doesn't even move me, because of what we're doing, like who we've become and how we're impacting people. I'm like, okay, that'll come.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we've been really successful with our client stories. Like we have a lot of clients that are winning and doing well, and not just doing well, but compared to this time in their life last year.
Oh my gosh,
in
yes.
this season, which can be a really hard season for people. And it's exactly probably what we're going to, not probably, that's exactly what we're going to get into today, is some of the things that pop up over the course of this season, meaning the holiday season, which is, for us in America, or in our culture, is going to be the Thanksgiving and Christmas season. I know we have people that listen from around the world, so if you're, that's the context we're speaking in today. But this end of the year, weather changing, getting colder, darker sooner, financial stress usually for most people, time crunches, food, abounds that people really don't want to, like, they want to indulge in it, but they know that it's not the greatest for their health. There's so many things that come at you this time of the year that I feel like people just go into it blindly. Really, they just like, well, that's the holidays, right? You're just supposed to be stressed out by your family and buy everybody 3 gifts and, try to go to work as much as you can and not be sick. And your kids are out of school like a month at a time and can't wait for January. You know what I mean? Like, it's like this breath hold.
Yeah, like something magical happens on January 31st, and all the problems of the last 8 weeks just magically diminish, which isn't true. And I think more often that it's not that people are blind, they're just straight in denial. Like they do this every year, hoping for a different outcome. Aunt Mildred is still going to say something racist. Your Uncle Fred still smells. He didn't figure out.
Aunt Mildred, was that a Jewish aunt? Is that where that came from?
I don't have a Jewish aunt named Mildred. Mazel tov. That's a beautiful thing. So our hope today is that in hearing the conversation between us, which really came from a conversation that we had from Coffee with Stacy, which happens every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Central.
In our school group.
Yes.
It's not just at a random place in the Twittersphere.
In the ether.
Yeah.
I mean, I could communicate via ether, probably. But it came from conversations of people having this really big pain points that was something they struggled with all year round. But since we are close to the holidays, this hits a little different. So I'm going to ask, as you guys are listening to this, to take the blinders off. We're going to step out of the river of denial and get abundantly honest with Christmas this year is going to look just like Christmas last year.
Yeah.
Thanksgiving this year, I mean, it might have some different players, it might have some different food, but truthfully, people's behavior doesn't change until it does. And so if you have a different expectation of the family members or even yourself who have behaved a certain way for such a long period of time, to expect anything else is just to cause yourself harm.
Yeah, and so one of the first things that was brought up on Coffee with Stacy is that when we think about priorities, I think I'll go as far as to say I know people think about what I want versus what other people want. Okay, so it becomes this me or them type conversation. So this is what I hold to be important. This is what I got to get done. Right? The language changes. The urgency goes up. The overall divisiveness with people that you like and love goes up because like they have a priority or priorities. You have priorities, right? And then it's like, well, so and so doesn't understand that we need to get this, and this done because every year I'm the one doing it. Okay, well. First of all, it sounds like a you problem, right? Why have you not shared this responsibility with someone else or that type of thing, right? And so I'm just bringing up that conversation as when you talk about priorities, careful about how you choose to frame that in your mind. Because I know I've been guilty of, and I've seen others who are guilty of making it a me versus them conversation instead of a conversation about they're not against me and I'm not against them. I'm just for myself. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to think about it in this way, or it's very helpful to think about it in this way, is when people have different priorities than you, they're not against you. They're just for themselves. They are looking for something, just like you are looking for something. And if you're a people pleaser, like a lot of people who listen to this podcast are, you're going to think that's crazy. I'm out here trying to make it better for you. I'm trying to make Christmas special for y'all. I'm trying to cook all the things because nobody else will, and all that other kind of stuff. And you're making it harder on me, right? You're not respecting my priority. Well, remember, people aren't trying to make it harder on you. They're just trying to make it easier on themselves. Just like you're trying to make it easy on yourself by having this discussion that other people are making it harder on you, right? By pointing those things out. And so remember, people aren't against you, they're for themselves. And so when you take that perspective into the calculus, you can come to the conclusion with a lot less, first of all, with a lot less irritation, for sure, with a lot less friction in your life, that, oh, you know what? I haven't been talking about this. I haven't been communicating about the right way to my spouse, my kids, my friends, whoever, my boss, to say, I've been looking at it. I've been trying to convince them that what's good for me is good for them, right? I've been trying to espouse what's good for me, as opposed to going, hold on, if we can get this done, actually your life gets a lot easier, right? Almost like you're trying to persuade the person that what's good for you is good for them, because most likely it probably is, especially if you're talking about a family dynamic, right? If mom's happy and she's the one who has to cook the meals, then guess what? We get fed and mom's not sad about it, right? Like mom's not mad at the end of it whenever like it's all said and done. And at the end of the day, again, we're using it in the context of the season just because it's seasonally appropriate. But this goes for any conversation that you're going to have with anybody for the rest of your life that you disagree with. Hey, they're not against me. They're probably just for themselves, because I don't have an inherent belief that the majority of the people that we interact with are bad actors. Don't get me wrong. There is evil in the world. There are people who their intent is to harm. I would say that most of the people that we interact with, their intent is looking out for number one, and they're not really worried about you as long as they get theirs.
You know what's really hard about that? Why this, I think, is a rub for people?
Tell me.
Is that if nobody is against you, then there can be no villain, and then there can be no victim. And so if I have to inherently believe that that they're not against me, and this is probably something I'm much better at it now, just that inherent fighter in me rises up from time to time. I heard it a little bit spicy at the desk earlier that was not at you. Just sometimes it gets to be, it wasn't at you, but you definitely have the fallout of it.
I was in the I was in the field of fire,
You were in the field of
as we'll say.
Is that there's no victim. And so you can't have the woe is me.
Right.
What do you mean they're for themselves? They're not against me. How can those two things be true? And if you step back for a second, it gives a lot of empathy and understanding in anything that is perceived as a potential conflict. And I think most of the time at holidays, and I don't know if men do this, I don't think that men are nearly as dramatic as women, but like who wore the same thing to the outfit or who had better jewelry at, the family photos. Men aren't doing that, of like, oh, their Christmas card was prettier than ours, or their children are more well behaved. It's like people get together at the holidays to show off their best. It's almost like social media in person, for a second to be like, no, my kids can't, be feral because we're only together once a year. Hold it together, family. Hold it together. Why? But
I think the Christmas cards are the original social media.
oh my gosh.
Yeah. Like this is our highlight. This is the highlights of our year. Take you back to the scrapbooking days.
Oh,
The original timeline.
The original timeline of can I tell you hijack this for a second? I love getting Christmas cards, especially for my friends with kids that I don't live near anymore, because I know that my children grow up, but their kids are the age of when the last time I saw them in person.
Mhm. So
tell me how the last time I saw your child was 6 and now he's 21 with a wife and a baby. I'm like, I'm so sorry. What has happened? Because how you remember other people is frozen in time while you're still moving forward. So I love sending Christmas cards because I like sending mail because I want people to know that they were thought about in a time where text is really easy. Like I love sending and giving mail.
That's a great perspective, and I'll add on to the one that you were just bringing up as you continue. Is not only do guys not think about comparing themselves to, or comparing like trying to win the best dressed or the best costume jewelry or like whatever it is, or the best actual jewelry. I would go so far as to say most of the time it's, dude, that's a freaking nice sports coat. Where did you get that at? And genuinely mean it. Be like, I am envious of that clothing, and I would like to have it too. Like I'm gonna ask my wife for that for Christmas. You know, like that type of thing. I think it actually goes in the opposite direction with dudes, because it's like this, wow, well dressed dude. Like that's not a common thing unless you know the person, they like that's their thing. Like they just like their style is their style. Anyway, I'm deviating off of that potential point.
All of that to say is that when it comes to if they're not against me but for themselves, it definitely changes. You can't be a victim. And if that's somewhere you feel really comfortable, one, we have a whole module in our school group about how not to be that. I will give a shameless plug to the amazing content you created today. 100% I'm going to give a totally shameless plug to what you created today. But it's also an opportunity for growth. And it comes down to, if somebody isn't against me, they're just for themselves, then it's much easier to establish yourself as a priority in any situation and not feel guilty about it. And that's really where the conversation Coffee with Stacey kind of came to, was how do I tell someone else no and not feel like a dirtbag, not feel guilty about it, and honor myself in the process. And that's really the conversation we're bringing to the table today, of the how to honor your own personal values and boundaries, and the ones you set up with your spouse, family, all of that, and navigate the emotions and feelings that come with making yourself a priority.
Yeah.
And the responsibility of other people having expectations on you that you never agreed to.
Yeah. I agree with that. And just as a clarification, in the Mindset Continuum course that we have in our school group, that I actually created and published today, we talk about the victim mentality, which is the woe is me person. That's the lowest point on the mindset continuum, and how that is the person who blames the rest of the world for their circumstances. No ownership. And I want to make sure that there is a difference between an actual victim, like someone who's been literally victimized by a situation, and the victim mentality, right? The victim mindset.
100%.
Those are two different things. Now, at some point, the person who has been a victim of something years down the line, still holding on to the mindset that they like, that their whole life is controlled by that one thing, can, like, there is territory to shift that mindset, is what I'm getting at. And that's actually a lot of what we help people do, right? Is like, hey, there's a thing that happened to you a long time ago, and I understand that influenced a lot of the course of your life up to this point, but we're here to tell you that you actually control that narrative, and we're so sorry that happened to you, but let's make it happen for you now instead of happen to you.
I love that.
And so when you're talking about priorities and how people will learn how to say no, and you were talking about it in a sense of telling other people no so that you can set your own personal boundaries, I find that people have just as hard of a time telling themselves no.
Ooh, let's start there. You want to start there?
Yeah.
Because that really is the
Well,
foundation to being able to tell other people no.
So it comes back to, again, the self-talk and understanding that your language matters, especially to yourself, is when you tell yourself no, you need to be respectful in that no. Excuse me. You need to be realistic in that no, in saying it's not a priority right now. Not I don't have time for that. Not I can't do that. Definitely not that one. Not you know, if I had so and so I could do that. Mm-mm. If you wanted to, you could in some way, shape, or form. It's not a priority for me right now, right? I'm sorry, that's just not a priority for me right now. So let's give an example. Most people around this time of year fall off of their movement routine a little bit, right? It's getting colder outside. Netflix is calling, right? Cookies abound.
That's because I make them and don't eat them.
Right.
That's what I have you for.
I can't get to the gym maybe in some areas because of the weather. You know, there's a lot of different reasons why we would ignore or whatever, make excuses to not go get in some movement, right? In a different way. It doesn't have to be the same thing you've done the rest of the year, just in some way, right? And to continue the habit of having a movement practice. And next to nobody that I know goes, you know what? That's just not a priority right now. This is a priority. They don't clearly outline the reason that they're avoiding that, because I think if they came face to face with the friction of avoiding it, they would realize that they in fact are making an excuse by blaming something else. They're saying, oh, you know, if I don't go shopping, my kids aren't going to have Christmas gifts or whatever. And so I just don't have time to work out this week. Okay. Well, what if we shifted that language to there are other responsibilities that need my attention right now. This week, movement is going to have to look different. It's not my number one priority as it might have been in previous weeks, right? Right now, my movement practice looks different. So just call it out. Say it, like call a spade a spade. I'm not going to be able to do 4 days of 45-minute strength training sessions like I normally do, right? That is not my highest priority right now, but that's also not a reason for me to avoid it entirely. So you have to make sure that when you start to talk about things that you're going to do or that you're not going to do, that you put them in their proper place for the situation that you are currently in. Because there are some things that you're probably going to have to drop. Hey, right now, you know, waking up and reading is not a priority to me. I'm trying to get the most sleep that I can because I'm staying up late at night to do XYZ. Maybe you picked up another job to be able to pay for the presents for the holidays. You know, whatever it is. That's my priority right now. My priority right now is not, you know, making the time to go read a book at 5 o'clock in the morning when I could sleep in until 6:30 because of another priority. It's not because you're trying to be more comfortable, right? It's because you are deprioritizing one thing to up the priority on another thing. At least that's the way that I'm using it in this example. My point being, making excuses is a shortcut to, well, really is the fastest way to being sad, really, because you start to blame yourself and go, or you start to, you know, have the victim mentality and blame other things. But I'm saying at the very least, you're just being really kind of down about the fact that you let that go and you were doing so good until Halloween, right? You were doing so good until Thanksgiving. And it's about, you know what? Let's be real about it. You didn't make it a priority. You realize that. And here we are. We get a chance to talk differently and do something differently tomorrow. I'm telling you this now so that you don't get to that point, right? This is going to be out before we get to Thanksgiving, that you don't get to that point and go, man, I regret not having that conversation with myself earlier to go, you know what? That's actually not a priority right now. So every time you feel the pull of, oh my gosh, I didn't go to the gym this week, it's, wait, I've already established with myself that that's not a priority right now. That doesn't mean that you're not going to do anything. It just means that that's not a priority right now and other things are. So at the risk of, over explaining that I think it's really important for people to have that internal conversation with themselves about things that they actually hold tight to the chest. They actually hold in their identity is like, I am a person, I'm a healthy individual who trains. That would be something I hold tight to my identity.
Mm-hmm.
And when I don't do it as frequently or in the way that in my head I think it should look, that causes friction internally, right? It's using these practices of identifying, okay, where is my talk right now to go? Actually, have you just not made time for it? Like you just literally didn't prioritize it? Okay, why didn't you prioritize it? Well, you're trying to build a business. It's going to look a little bit different. So next week doesn't mean it's going to look perfect. It just means that now that you've had that conversation, you can go and you can build it into your cadence to where it actually makes a lot more sense. Oh, okay. I don't need to go for 45 minutes. I need to go for 25 minutes. I need to do something a little bit more streamlined so I don't have to spend an extra 20 minutes and then be late for the next priority that I have. Right. So it's just about having that conversation with yourself so that you understand when things change, and they will around the holidays. That's what we started this conversation. Hey, going into it blind is not helpful. That you don't have to come down with that shame and guilt of, well, I don't know what happened. It just all of a sudden Thanksgiving came around and I stopped training like I normally do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a helpful thing to start to think about right now.
When you were talking, it reminded me of not only conversations we've had with our clients, but also a podcast that we want to record. Maybe it'll be the next one we release. It's the difference between discipline and rigidity.
Mm.
And if saying no to yourself and realizing that whatever it is isn't a priority right now, then you come in conflict with where you are rigid. But if I don't do this, this must mean I am. Like as you explained it, that's a lot of flexible thinking. I mean, we do a lot of work on training ourselves.
Yeah, that's an internal bias that we have
to do it. Not only is it an internal bias, but it's something we curate and cultivate on purpose. And at times we can see it in each other and be able to call it out and mirror it. But it's something we really strive for, that how can we be flexible here? And it is something we'll bring up on a different conversation here, because it was, when we brought it up within our co-op, it was something that kind of shook the nations. It was like, hold on. Was that dramatic? Shook the nations. People had a very visceral response to it.
I just didn't expect that to pop out as the effect that it had, but fair enough.
I mean, what are we, 10 days post-election? The nation has been shooketh. People have a lot of feelings.
That is true. People have a lot of feelings.
Okay, so if we start with telling yourself no to what is a priority, then do you think it becomes easier to tell other people no? Now, I think I have a bias towards this answer. Let's just play a fun game. Do you think it's easier for me to tell people no, or easier for you to tell people no?
Oh, okay. Fun game.
Oh my God, I totally feel like I've set myself up for this. Go ahead.
I think it's easier for me to tell other people no.
Really? This is people in general or just specific people?
Well, now you're getting into the nitty gritty. Now you're changing the rules.
Okay, let's stay with the first rule. You think it's easier for you to tell people no?
I think.
Okay.
Do you have a different opinion?
I have the opposite opinion.
Okay, so that would be a different one.
I think it's contextual.
Okay.
I think it's contextual. I do also believe that we hold a very same standard, that we say yes as often as we can, and we reserve our no's intentionally, that we only say no when we need to use a no. We try to say yes as often as we can to whoever, whatever, when it's in line with our priorities, that no's are reserved intentionally.
I want to bring it back to where you were saying, does it make it easier to tell other people no when you have your internal priorities set, like when you know how to talk to yourself about it? And I think it's helpful, but I don't think it makes it any easier. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'd agree with that too, because I mean, you watch me do it. I'm gonna change my mind here live, because there's things that I want to say yes to, and you're like, hold on, are you sure you want to say yes to that? So I'm gonna change it, is that you are better at saying no to most things than I am, because I also think that I can do more than I actually can, and you have a better barometer of what your capacity is. And I still struggle with, I think I can do everything all the time. So I can say yes to it and then deal with the consequences of, usually it's on my own physical body later, because I wanted to be helpful.
Yeah.
I wanted to serve someone. I wanted to put someone else first, which is typically what my pattern has been, is serving other people and showing up for other people, and me secondary, which is really how this conversation came up in the group. Because as I changed the dynamics in my relationships, especially within the last 6 months, of saying, these are my personal priorities and I am hardlining this. The question came was, Stacey, how do you do this? Because there was some fallout from me making some hard lines and saying, this is my personal priority of rest and training and my family and my profession, and I'm not moving this, or how I will be engaged with, or when you, or not you, but you in general, people have access to me. And so there was definitely some friction in me setting these boundaries. And so the people of our cope was like, okay, well, how do you do it and not feel guilty? And that's going to come back to, it's still hard. I mean, we do it. That doesn't make it mean that it is easy for us to do it. But because we can see the total picture, we execute based on what is most important to us.
I would say it's more of a step process. So you must have your internal priority set. What's important to me right now? What am I building toward? Those type of questions. Okay. It doesn't mean that it makes it easier to say no in the moment, right? Or when the situations pop up. But it will help with the guilt and shame. Because if you do not have your internal priorities set, when you are given a chance to say no, and you actually do say no, on the off chance you actually do say no, even though it is difficult, you're going to feel guilty for saying no, but you don't know, because you don't know why you said no. You said no, but now you feel like an ass because you said no, right? Whereas if you have your priority set internally, you can say, no, that's not a priority for me right now, because I know what is. If you don't know what is, you don't have any confidence in saying no. So it doesn't make the no any easier, the actual no, but post hoc, when you're alone again and you're outside of the chance that you had to say yes or no, like outside of that decision, then you can go back and go, that was difficult, but I know why I said no. I know what I'm doing it for. And that's what you're really good at, is you've set your internal compass, which is why you invited other people to do it with you, in terms of the, what you want and how to get it group that we've established, right? Which is also part of being in the school group. It's something that we're helping people set this vision and understand what priorities are for the year of 2025 and that type of thing. But all that being said, is when you have internal priorities set, it's the same thing in a business, right? We have our internal priority. We know what is important now, and everything else either gets drastically reduced or falls to the wayside. Like we know what is not a right now thing, right? We've had this conversation plenty of times definitely in the last month. But like, hey, we know right now we are headed in this. This is where our eyes are focused, and everything else is going to have to wait for later. And if it's still around later, then we'll take another look at it. Most things are going to fall off, and you're probably not going to rethink about them, right?
I would agree.
And so, to go back to the question of how do you tell other people no, is you're not going to be able to if you don't know what if you don't know what you're trying to prioritize right now in your life, because otherwise you're just going to be other people's ragdoll. You're just going to let other people use you for whatever serves them. Again, they're not against you, they're for themselves. They really love the cookies that Stacy makes every year at the holidays. So they're going to ask you to make a couple dozen cookies for this party or this event or what, right? Because my family just loves your chocolate chip cookies. And so if that's putting you out but they don't know that and you don't know that, then that's going to bring up some frustration, maybe some resentment, that type of stuff. Like, every year they always come around asking for cookies. Well, your ass the one keep saying yes to making them, right? So you have to turn that finger around and say, okay, well, what is it? How can I give them a gentle no that helps illustrate the need that I have right now? My need is not making cookies for other people. It's prioritizing my kids, right? Whatever the thing is. And so now it comes into, okay, I understand what my priorities are. I understand where I need to say no. And I will give you a very simple framework for where do you need to say no. If it's not a hell yes, it's a no.
Mm-hmm.
And if you wouldn't do it tomorrow, don't commit to something in a month. The next thing becomes, how do you say no? Because I think this is where people really struggle. I don't want to do this, but I don't want to sound like a dick. It's the people pleasers, right? It's the people pleasers, because some people don't give a damn about saying no. That they just say no just for the fun of it. Nope. And then they just walk away, right? And they don't care how other people feel. That's a little bit of it. Well, I don't think we're talking to that person, but there are people out there like that.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking to the people who are people pleasers, who understand that they're getting taken advantage of, but they don't understand how to head it off at the pass, how to nip it in the bud. And so now it becomes, okay, well, how do you give a gentle no? Right? I know we've been in situations before where I've said something to the effect of, that's just not a priority for me right now. Like, I literally use that language.
You did.
And take it or leave it, that's what you're going to get, right? The hardest thing past that statement right there is not giving some type of explanation to try to justify the reason you're saying no. That their feelings are not up to you. How they feel about your no is not up to you. And that's really hard for a person who identifies as a people pleaser, who identifies as someone who serves. That's really hard for them to do. That's really hard for them to sit with and be like, oh, I really hate telling them that I'm not going to be able to dress up as Santa Claus for the Salvation Army this year. Okay. But that no is allowing you to say yes to something that means more.
That is really one of the key things. And I want to come back to when we talk about people being a people pleaser, because I think that's kind of gotten a bad rap, right? Because we wouldn't have the jobs that we have if we really didn't want to please people. Now, that's not our identity, but you and I both really like to make our families happy, like our clients happy, like each other happy. We work on pleasing other people. It's not our identity. It's not who we are, but we actually enjoy bringing joy to other people. The challenge is when you switch the balance of choosing to please other people at a detriment to yourself. So if we're going to talk about people pleasers, especially in the context of saying no, it's that when you say yes to something that causes harm or stress, is a detriment to yourself. And so especially at this time of year, that it becomes things we say yes to out of obligation instead of intentionality.
Tradition.
Tradition. So when we say, it's easy for us to say it's a hell yes or a hell no, but we have a lot of practice and we've created a culture between us that, okay, when we ask each other a question about something we want to do or something we're bouncing in our head and the hesitation is like, is that a hell yes or hell no? We still have to ask ourselves the question, because it's not that we're not pulled in another direction. It's not like that we're stoic and just have no feelings at all. It's that practice of detaching from the emotion of it and going, okay, what is the best outcome in this situation. So when we go back to saying no, that how can you say no to someone that doesn't harm them and doesn't harm you is really, I think, the question that a lot of people are asking. And so one of the questions that was posed to me was like, well, how do I tell somebody I don't want to do that? It's not a priority to me right now. And so if you guys are listening to this or watching, my encouragement to you would be to try to say no, not try, but to say no to things at the beginning that don't really matter. If you've got a big family tradition and you think you're going to walk in this Christmas and not participate in like the family matching pajama exchange because you're so over it and you don't want to wear reindeers on your ass, this is the year you're taking a stand. That might be a little too far. That might be too much of a, I'm going to draw the line here. Say no to things that are benign so you get the reps in of just having the agency to say no to things that don't really matter. Like if your kids would be, Mom, can you get that snack for me out of the pantry? And they are capable of doing it themselves. No, you can grab it. It's on the second shelf. Actually, I'm going to change that. Here's how I love to answer because I try to save my nose. Yes, I'd love to, but I think you could do it yourself. Could you go get that for me? And if you start a rejection, these are my air quotes for rejection, if you're watching, with a yes, I would love to. I'm sorry, it's not a priority right now. I can do XYZ. Or yes, I would be willing to, but I can't do that right now. Could we talk about it again in 2 weeks? That you give somebody a yes to something that you can say yes to, either at a future date or something that you are willing to do. So like, for example, if you were like, Stacy, could you bake, that really cool pumpkin pie that I saw on the internet today for me to bring home to give to my mom for Thanksgiving? I'd actually like 5 of them. I'd be like, Justin, I would love to. I can't bake 5. Can I bake 1? Would you be okay if I made one? What are you going to say?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
That there was a give in it. And so it doesn't make it feel as harsh, quote unquote.
Right.
Because you're saying yes to something. What do you have?
So I posted this, and I'll probably repost it when we post this podcast in the school group. But I posted this not too long ago in there. It was a little graphic that I picked up from a newsletter or something. It's called The Art of Saying No.
Ooh.
So here's some ways that you can take with you to say no in a very nice way. Thank you for the offer. Unfortunately, I can't make it, but thank you for thinking of me.
That's a good one.
I'd love to see you, but I haven't been able to get much time for myself lately, and I promised myself I'd have a quiet weekend. I don't really have the bandwidth for much socializing right now, but I would love to spend time with you in a couple of days, weeks, months. Right? That one I really like, and I think you could actually shorten that to say, I would love to. Unfortunately, I've been doing a lot this week, but I would love to set a date to where we could get together. Mm-hmm. Right? So where you don't feel pressure to go. Usually I think this comes up in, can you donate your time and your energy to come do XYZ? Another way to even say that too, if you have the means, like you have the financial means, but you maybe don't have the time means, is to say, I would love to help with that. Unfortunately, I can't do that, but I would love to donate to it if I could. Right? Something like that. Mm-hmm. If it's, I know the holidays kind of bring up things like that. I love hanging out with you, but if I'm honest, blank activity isn't my thing. I hope you have fun. Right?
Ooh, that's a good one. And
that's a little bit of a friend thing, I think.
Well, as you were speaking of this, I thought about if you're going to say no, okay, but we're starting it with a yes. Yes, I'd love to, or yes, I'd be willing to, and offer something else. Don't lie. Whatever you caveat it with, it has to be something that you actually want to do. And here's what I'm thinking about. I was actually thinking about, there was a time that somebody wanted to spend more time with me, and I really had no interest in spending time with that person. And I'm not going to lie and say yes that I love to. And so I had to end really the relationship in a way that was honoring to both people, but not give a false hope for something else. Because again, we're going to go back to people aren't against you, they're for themselves. And this person wanted access to me, but the exchange wasn't equal. And it was a time in my life where I didn't have more to give than what I was already giving to the things that were a priority to me. So whatever you're saying yes to, don't lie about your yes. People would rather you be honest and be a little bit hurt than be disappointed in your no and know that you're a liar.
I mean, I'm going to even say that it's going to help you feel less shame if you're honest about it.
Oh, 100%.
Right. So, I mean, yes, you're right. Don't lie because that's not the right thing to do. But in reality, it's going to help you a lot more than it's going to help them in terms of just being like, knowing that, not knowing this is why, but knowing I appreciate it. And I appreciate you, because that's the other thing too, is I think some people think, and some people actually might feel like this, but that's not up to you, that when you say no to a thing, that it feels like you're saying no to the person. It doesn't mean that I don't like the person. I genuinely might like the person. I just cannot commit to the thing. Right. And so the other thing is, you could look at the season of life that you're in and use that as an example. Hey, I would love to, but in this season, I can't commit to that. And I mean, really, it's not that you're trying to give things that people can't argue with. Like, you're not trying to be like, oh, nobody can argue with that statement. Like, people can argue with whatever they want, even if they're like, oh, please, like, you do it every year, or da-da-da-da-da. And, they try to kind of beg on the backside of it. That's your opportunity to be like, again, I'd love to, but that's just not the season that I'm in, right? If you have to repeat it one more time and then disengage from the conversation. And somebody who is going to beg you for your time is not the person that you want to be giving your time to anyway, right?
They just told you they don't respect you.
Yeah. And if it's somebody that you really know well, and you like somebody that you trust, somebody that you know well, those are probably going to be the people that you're going to have the hardest time, I think, saying no to some degree, because you're going to feel like you're going to cause a bump in the relationship that you really enjoy engaging in. You could just literally be honest with them, like, hey, right now, I'm really stressed based off of the time of year that it is, and I'm not going to be able to commit to that. Right. Or, hey, right now, I know I've said no the last few times you invited me. And right now, I'm something degree of, I mean, you don't have to use like words like depressed or stressed or anxious, but you could say right now, that's just not the thing that's going to help me. And so, right now, I'm going to have to say no. Right. And you don't even have to make a commitment to a future date, because that's one of the things I think gets us in trouble, is we commit to things months out, and then when the time gets here, you're like a whole different person by then, and you're like, why did I commit to that back in January that I told him I would do the Christmas party? Right? Like,
I've gotten caught there.
That's why I say, if you wouldn't do it tomorrow, then don't commit to it in a month. If you would do it tomorrow, go ahead, commit to it in a month or months or whatever it is, right? Like, again, and I understand this is not a perfect formula. You're going to have to bite the bullet on some things every once in a while and do things that are not up to you for the benefit of someone else. Like, we all do things for our kids, volunteering or participating in something, or, I mean, like, I'll give you an example. Coaching my son's soccer game.
I was going there.
Right? I was like,
oh my gosh.
Okay, well, this was, and I'm not saying that was the most worst thing in the world. Actually, at the end of the day, I thought it was, looking back, I think it'll be a fun memory to have. But there were times when, okay, really, are we about to go watch these 3-year-olds run around and just chase a ball for 30 minutes on a Tuesday afternoon, when the easiest thing to do is just sit at home, right? And so, yes, there are going to be some times where you don't feel the most excited about going into the things that you've previously committed to. That is always going to be true. What we're saying here is, when you have an opportunity to say no to something that really doesn't pour back into you, take that opportunity. And to your point, use the little opportunities, like when somebody asks you to get something, or the little ambiguous, not inconsequential no's, to practice for ultimately the big no's.
Especially if you're not good at it yet. That you have to practice. You can't assume, like, I'm going to walk up to a bar and just deadlift 250 pounds when I haven't done it before. I've just looked at the weights but never put them in my hand. So what do you do? Because this question came up. When the struggle is disappointing people's expectations that you were not made aware of. So in this no, it was, okay, I'm learning to say no. People have expectations on me that I did not agree to. And that was a huge part of Coffee with Stacy. And people were like, oh my goodness, how do you do this? Because especially at this time of year, there are a lot of unspoken expectations of where you need to be, how it should look, and all of that. And when you start to change your behavior, it literally changes everything around you. Your no is not just a simple no. If I say no to this, then I'm saying no to this. And who am I going to make mad? And who's going to call me? And then I made this person mad. Because what I hear a lot is that people are afraid to make other people mad because there was an expectation that they didn't even know about. They didn't even know there was an expectation on them. And they find out about it some way. And you're like, I never said yes to this. And what I brought to the group was other people's disappointment on an expectation you did not agree to is not your problem.
Being afraid of the ripple effects of your no is a very real thing. So let's go ahead and identify that as it is right now, right? If you're afraid of this is going to impact whatever down the line, then you need to address that fear, because that's a very real fear. And that can make you say yes out of sheer fear of what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Rather than from a place of understanding your priorities. And so if you have an expectation, unspoken expectation, that somehow gets brought up that you didn't agree to, was unspoken, it is going to be on you to call that out. Because here's the thing that we literally have it written right over there on the door. Competitors own their world. And so in the mindset continuum, we talk about the highest level of the mindset being the competitor. Again, won't get into what that means, but basically these people this is the mindset where you're taking ownership of what goes on in your world. Now, you could never have guessed that somebody had an expectation on you that wasn't explicitly stated, right? Or that you didn't agree to, right? That's not something that you have control over. It's not about control. It's about owning the repercussions, about owning your world. So if it affects you, it's part of your world, okay? So if it affects you and you have this unspoken expectation and you finally become aware of it somehow, now that you're aware of it, the monkey's on your back, so to speak, okay? So now it's up to you to go to that entity, to that person, and say, I want to make something very clear. If there's an expectation of me, I need to know it. This is how I need to know it. This is when I need to know it. And you're going to get every single bit of me that you can possibly get as long as I understand what's expected, right? And again, I'm giving it a little bit more of a matter-of-fact, straightforward manner. You could do it in a lot of different ways, such as, hey, I really feel like I kind of let you down on this time. Would you be opposed to next time that you need something from me, laying that out for me a month ahead of time so I can make sure that I'm better prepared for what you need, right? But again, they're not against you. They're for themselves. So how do you speak to them in a way that puts the spotlight on you showing up for them? Now, again, the baseline assumption is this something that you want to do, okay? If it's something that you don't want to do, now the conversation becomes, hey, I've realized that you had an expectation of XYZ, and that's something that I couldn't deliver on. Honestly, that's not a priority for me right now. I would love to help you figure out how you can, like how you can do whatever it is that they were expecting you to do. I would love to help you figure out how to meet that expectation, but I'm not going to be able to deliver on that, right? That's a very hard thing to do. I'm saying in simple terms because we're having this conversation on the podcast. But what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, the buck has got to start and stop with you. Now, I'm not saying you're responsible for this invisible expectation that was set on you, but you are responsible for taking ownership of the fact that it affects you. Because if you ignore it, it's not going to get any better. And if you're mean about it, then you're going to you're going to damage the relationship with most likely a very close person, because assumed expectations are usually from people who are close to you, not people who have never met you before. And so that's where you have to go, hey, look, I'm noticing this happens a lot. I'm noticing a pattern where I've disappointed you for XYZ reason, and I didn't understand that there was an expectation there. I would really love to make your life better by understanding what's expected of me, right? Or something like that. Again, the language could be, 10 different ways. And again, my bias is to be straightforward. Not everybody's bias is to be straightforward. So navigating that conversation can be difficult, and that's not something that we're going to be able to do in a generalized fashion on a podcast.
No way. It's really not. And I was thinking about conversations that have come up, especially not so much around Thanksgiving, but more around Christmas, where even from a spiritual context of my family expects me to go to Christmas Eve services, and I don't believe what they believe. And I've always done it, and I don't want to do this anymore. How do I make that move? Or my family expects me to host this thing because I already have. And I think it's really important to talk about how traditions were made to pass on memories, right? We make traditions so we have touch points to be like, hey, remember last year? And I think I'm going to give an example is that we have on our Christmas tree. I have ornaments that my kids have made every year, most every Christmas since Isaiah was probably 3 or 4. So 15, 16 years, we would go to a ceramics place and each kid would paint their ornament, and they'd put, it was whatever they were into that year. And then we put the year on the back and things like that. So our tree is legitimately filled with their childhood, so that when they grow up, they take all of their ornaments with them. And as they get their own house, like they have their childhood with them on the tree. Well, there were a couple of years that we didn't do that. And so the kids were like, but it's tradition. I'm like, but we can make a new one, because what was the intent? Okay. So what if this year we painted wood and we didn't make it to the ceramic store? And so you have to look at, and it goes back to the rigidity and flexibility of when we come to traditions, especially around this year, things that might have served you or your family or your relationship in previous times, we're continually growing and evolving, and not everything is meant to stay forever. And when you really start to put other people's needs or desires above your own in a way that causes you harm, I think we're completely missing the intent of what was designed in getting together at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then you end up resenting the whole thing, and it just grows and grows and grows.
Yeah, I think that's a great the intent is a great addition to the expectations conversation, because as long as you can do your best to express your intent in that dialogue, you're going to have to be okay with whatever is said, right? Hey, my intent here is to make sure that everybody gets what they think they need. Okay. But that also includes me understanding what's expected. Right. And so just laying those things out. And again, it's probably a series of conversations that you have to have. And it actually makes me think of, have you ever seen the movie Christmas with the Cranks?
Yes.
This is exactly what we're talking about, right? He goes and tries to, since their daughter's not at home anymore, go on a cruise with his wife and skip Christmas. right? And everybody has these expectations, and they always buy a tree from the Boy Scouts. They always put up Frosty on the roof. They always do. They always buy a calendar from the police department and all that kind of stuff. And so he's trying to break this tradition and leave for Christmas because their daughter is not at home anymore. And so, not going to spoiler alert the movie for anybody or anything like that, but at the end of the day, it really brings forward, and from a visual sense, this concept of tradition and expectation, and when you try to go against it and everybody else is for it, it really makes you look like an asshole. It really does. Like, from a public perception, that's a bullet that you're going to have to be prepared to take.
So I want to take this as we kind of wrap this up, of something that we do really well, not only in our community, but with our clients. Because what no really is a pattern interrupt. No to anything. It's like a red light. You were going down the road, and then all of a sudden it's yellow, you slow down and it's red. And we understand pattern interrupts in our day-to-day life. You see a fire truck, you pull over to the right and it stops and it interrupts your pattern. There's really no emotions attached to that. So everybody typically complies, or if there's a stop sign, you go first, I go second. There's interrupts to patterns that we're conditioned to follow. When we're talking about no's, especially when they're a detriment to ourselves, it's a pattern interrupt of your own belief system, so to speak, if you've always been a yes person, which makes it so much more challenging to do. So what I love is, because we've really taken this ideology, and personally, professionally, of how do we reduce the friction to make it possible for people. I mean, we started with saying no to yourself before you can say no to other people. And then we moved to saying no to other people and building small little thresholds of tolerance. But when we come to pattern interrupts, if we were going to lay a foundation other than brushing your teeth with your left hand, where are some things that people can practice these pattern interrupts that make saying no, even to themselves, a little bit easier? Because this isn't a one-time conversation. I mean, these are things that we talk with our clients week in, week out, to be able to practice to be successful. And so if you're listening and watching to this and you're like, oh yeah, this is cake. No, this is hard work, which is why people say yes.
So it's funny that you mentioned brushing your teeth. I'm going to give one it's going to seem a little wacky, but it's actually going to be a twofer.
A twofer?
Yeah. So if I'm understanding what you're saying is, if you can learn how to do pattern interrupt in general,
yes,
you can learn how to do this. It's going to ease you into pattern interrupts of no's in your life, right?
Yes, because saying no to somebody else is a pattern interrupt of their expectation and of what makes you comfortable.
Right. Okay. So this one gonna seem a little funky, especially if you eat dinner with other people on a regular basis. But right after you eat dinner, and this is especially going to be powerful if you have a problem with dessert, right after you eat dinner, go brush your teeth. Literally, right after you take the last bite and you've swallowed it and you're done with that meal, go brush your teeth. Because let's assume that most people are eating dinner at home, right? They're going to be within access to their toothbrush and all that kind of stuff. Go brush your teeth. Now, it's a pattern interrupt because most people get up, go clean the dishes, go sit down and watch Netflix, get dessert, whatever the thing is that they do. Get up, go brush your teeth. Couple benefits here. First of all, pattern interrupt. Like, that's weird. Who brushes their teeth right after dinner, right? Like, literally right after dinner.
We're making dentists so happy right now.
Number two is you're going to be less likely to eat anything else for the rest of the night. And that's probably where most people are getting another, going to be honest, 300 to 500 calories at the end of their day.
At least.
Yeah. End of the day, you're tired. Desserts sound good, whatever, right? So go brush your teeth. Third of all, now you've already brushed your teeth. Like, that's one less thing you had to do before bed. Like,
so efficient.
Right. And so what I'm getting at is, whether all of those benefits matter to you or not, it's a very simple and almost innocuous thing to do, to go, yep, time to go brush my teeth. Like, and if this is something that you're actually going to go and try, I would set a timer on your watch of your phone to be roughly around the time that you think you're going to finish dinner, to go off and be like, brush your teeth. Now, It's going to be super weird for your spouse and your kids. They're like, why is
into oral hygiene right now?
Why are they going to brush their teeth? This is so weird. And they don't deserve any explanation. You can just simply say, hey, I'm just trying this new thing right now. And so I think it's kind of fun. I'm just going to go brush my teeth. Right. Just kind of make it take the drama out of it. Right. Take the pressure off of it. That would be my little kind of pattern interrupt if you really wanted to try something like that. Another thing that you could do is while you are, a lot of people who listen to our podcast go on like a daily walk, or they walk at some point in their day. To the degree that you can, where it's safe, walk backwards.
You're so good at that. I tried it yesterday, and I am not very good at walking backwards.
Now, you might have to go slow, and it might be a little weird, and it might be a little awkward, and that's the point. It's a pattern interrupt. You're not used to it, so it's going to be a little awkward. But walking backwards actually has some knee health benefits, and it's going to be a pattern interrupt. So obviously, don't fall, don't take this as medical advice, like whatever. But those are just some like kind of simple, fun things that you could draw.
Again, these are all guidelines. If you want more of it, this is legitimately part of how we coach people, is interrupting patterns so they can create new ones in regards to their health and their life. And we do it within our online community as well. It is not simple, and it is also not easy. And the biggest question you can ask yourself is, where am I searching for comfort that's doing me a disservice? And typically, we're saying yes to things we don't want to because we don't want to cause friction and be uncomfortable. And so as Justin and I kind of, explained, is that we might not be normal, but we intentionally choose things that make us uncomfortable to become better. We look for friction so that we can become better at other things. But we didn't start that way. Every time we accomplish something or level up on something personally within ourselves, we're like, okay, well, what else does this look like? And so, but we all start somewhere. So it might be walking backwards. It might be brushing your teeth. It might be saying no to something benign. It might be they messed up your drink at Starbucks and you actually ask them to remake it nicely instead of just drinking it. I know so many people who don't ask for their drink to be remade because they don't want to be a burden or bother. It might be reaching out to someone when just because they were on your mind. I get so many messages of like, I didn't want to bother you. I never told you were a bother. You're not bothering me. I'm here for you to reach out to me. Please reach out to me. What would you add?
The thing I was thinking about with the Starbucks thing, if you don't have a chance to, like, if they actually make your drink right and you don't have a chance to do that, give them a different name.
Ooh,
give them a name that's not
look
your
at
name.
that, reducing the friction.
Right. Like, hey, and what's the name on that order? Robert. Right? Like, just pick some benign name or pick whatever name you want to, and just like, hey, it almost can be like this little source of joy in your day. Like, that's definitely a two for like pattern interrupting. Plus, you're like, oh, this is kind of fun. Like, it's like, oh, they're saying a random name. Like, I mean, you could even, if you were like really want to crank this up, you could, give them some type of like really hard name to pronounce and like see how they spell it on the cup, right? But I wanna add, as we wrap this up, that yes, we're not normal on purpose.
Yeah.
You don't listen to this podcast because we're normal, right? We're not normal in the sense that we're reaching for something more. We're reaching for something higher because we are trying to attract people to do that for themselves. Mm-hmm. And so we know that people are only really ever going to try maybe 50, 60, 70% of what we're willing to try, as far as like putting yourself out there and going for something that's really hard and takes a long time and takes consistency and all that kind of stuff. And so that's going to be my call for anyone listening to this podcast who is not into being normal, but wants to learn normal as our culture and our society defines it, but and wants to learn how to do this in a more tight-knit way. Then that is what our school community is all about. We call it the Fortify Health Coaching Co-op or cooperative, because it is people giving as much as they get. It is a cooperative. Now, me and Stacy are the, leaders of the community, but that doesn't mean that we are the only ones who are giving value in there. And so if this is something that resonates with you, we're going to be talking more about this. There is a lot of the things that we referenced today are going to be in courses that are in our school group. And this concept of learning how to say no better is something that I'm sure that we will continue to pick up and recirculate a lot during this season and in seasons to come. And so if that's something that resonates with you, there will be a link in the description, as there always is, to join our co-op. You're always willing to message us on Instagram, ask us questions, whatever, about that, if that's something that you're willing to commit to. It is not free. You will get it free for 7 days, but it is a small financial commitment, no more than, a Peloton membership or, a YouTube TV subscription or whatever it is that, your monthly coffee spend. And so we know that it's worth what we ask people to invest in it. And you're only going to get out of it is only going to get out as much as you put in, just like anything else. And so we're going to invite you to come into the group. And as a matter of fact, we are getting ready to kick off a December challenge.
We are? You want to tell them?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
So, out of all the things that you could say no to, this is not one of them. Okay.
You're not going to want to. Also, can we just say, like, it's kind of hard to say no to me? Harder to say no to you?
Look, I'm not going to say it's harder to say no to you than it is to me or vice versa. What I am going to say is that if you listen this long, it's not going to be a no.
It's not going to be a no.
Let's put it that way. So the only qualification to do this challenge that we're promoting in December is to be a part of the group. It doesn't cost you anything extra other than the investment in the group. And so what we're actually doing is we are launching a challenge series.
I know. I love this. I knew we're a little bit over time, but can we talk about our intent of why we made it a series and really what our heart is behind this challenge?
Sure. So as a shorthand way, the challenge in December is building momentum. It's not about losing weight. It's not about trying to look better necessarily. It's literally about simple, small, daily choices that actually build momentum for the bigger things that you want to execute on in January and beyond. Okay, so this challenge is literally about building momentum. And so we've picked a handful of things for people to commit to do for 28 days in December. Yes, I know there's more than 28 days in December. But for that time in December, to give them reps under their belt, just like those little no's we talked about, reps under their belt of fulfilling a commitment to themselves so that they can fulfill the bigger commitments that they're inevitably going to ask of themselves in January. And so if that's something that interests you, absolutely reach out to us. Come see what's going on in the school group. We're going to talk all about it. That's the only requirement to do it. Secondly, this is the first step in a 3-step challenge series. Okay. So we're doing this one in December, all about gaining momentum. We're going to do another one in January, all about really making people more metabolically healthy as they come out of the holiday season, but before they jump into that, eat less, move more type mentality, right? And before they get into the craziness that is whatever the beginning of the year brings into your life, right? And so we're going to do getting momentum in December. We're going to get into higher version of your metabolism, your metabolic health, your internal health in January. And then come the springtime, the third challenge is going to be geared all around getting in better shape, right? Improving your fitness, losing weight if that's what you want to do, all those type of things. And so we're inviting you to this series of challenges because we believe that piggybacking off of each other like they are, that you're going to get the most bang for your buck by committing to the process. And we're not going to be mad at you if you don't do the one in December and you come and start in January. But what I'm giving you is this. The sooner you start to get the reps, the easier it's going to be on you long term.
100, 1,000,000%, since I do everything in hundreds. The other thing that I want to add that if you are listening to this podcast and you follow us on social media and you enjoy what we provide in this community, it really is the way to get us live, is that we have 2 live calls a week. One with both of us, and then Coffee with Stacy is just with Stacy, not Justin. And we've never really made ourselves available like that before for people to just bring whatever to the table and really just serve people well.
Absolutely. So we'd love to have you as always. Share, comment, give a review. We don't really ask for those on the podcast, but
we ever
yeah,
have.
we would love to have a review or a 5-star rating. If it's not going to be 5 stars, don't leave a review. No, just kidding. That just your feedback on anything, because I think that's how, I don't know, that's how the Apple algorithms place our podcast. I have no idea. I'm going to be honest with you. I just want to see what you thought, what you learned. I have literally no care about how far our podcast goes because we're going to put it out no matter what. So anyway, as this conversation wraps up, remember, practice those little no's, and we will see you next time.